Good afternoon. And today I will cover the last two of the verses of the 37 practices of Bodhisattvas, which we've been going through the last couple of months. So first, verse 36, I'll read it. In brief, whatever you are doing, ask yourself, what's the state of my mind? With constant mindfulness and mental alertness, accomplish others' good. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So this verse is a kind of summary of all the previous verses. It points out, as I can see, two important themes that have come up again and again in the previous verses. So one is accomplishing others' good, which is the whole point of the Bodhisattva's practice, the Bodhisattva's way of life. So a Bodhisattva is someone who has great love and compassion and altruism for all living beings and is totally dedicated to doing what's good for others. And so this is, if we really wish to follow the Bodhisattva's path, practice as bodhisattvas do, then we should keep this in mind, accomplishing others' good. And there's two levels of that. One is short-term, and there's also long-term. So short-term means just like here and now in our daily life. We can just be aware of the other people and living beings around us, living beings like animals, insects, birds, and so on. So sentient beings who are around us, just trying to maintain awareness that they, just like ourselves, want to be happy and do not want to suffer. And then try as much as we can to ensure our actions are in accord with that we do what will enable them to be happy and refrain from doing things that would make them suffer. Of course, it's difficult to do that 100% perfectly, but at least to try to do that, to try to maintain that awareness and that dedication, to really try to do what's good for others and avoid what's harmful for them. So that's one way of accomplishing others' good. And the other way is long-term, which means aspiring for enlightenment and doing as much as we can to create the causes for enlightenment. So there's lots of practices we can do, like the 6 perfections, starting with keeping our vows, our precepts, and then developing love and compassion. So many things that we can do to bring ourselves closer to enlightenment, create the causes for enlightenment. And of course, it takes a long time to reach enlightenment, but we have to start somewhere. So we just do whatever we can, as much as we can in our daily life, to start moving in that direction of enlightenment. And then once we are enlightened, then we can accomplish the good of others in the best possible way, help them be free of suffering and help them reach enlightenment as well. So this is one of the two themes mentioned in this verse, which recurred again and again in the previous verses. So the previous verses gave lots of advice about how to accomplish others' good. Then the second theme mentioned here is watching our mind, trying as much as we can to check our state of mind. And what that basically means is being on the lookout for the arisal of disturbing emotions like anger, attachment, greed, jealousy, self-centeredness, ignorance. So knowing which states of mind lead to trouble, to problems, and are an obstacle for our practice for reaching enlightenment. So being on the lookout for those, and when we do notice them, doing what we can to counteract them with remedies. And again, many of the verses talk about remedies to the disturbing emotions. And if we can't manage to remedy them on our own, then we can seek help from our spiritual teachers and spiritual friends. And there's lots of ways we can work on our mind and try to cool down the disturbing thoughts and emotions. And it mentions here constant mindfulness and alertness. So that came up in the previous verse. Mindfulness here meaning keeping in mind and not forgetting the practices that we should do, such as the precepts that we've taken and all the other things that we've learned in the Dharma. So trying to keep those in mind and not totally forget them or go far away from them. Trying to keep them in mind, keep mindful of them, and then using alertness, watching our mind and checking to see, am I behaving in accordance with what I should be doing, or am I going astray, off on a sidetrack? I heard this story that Lama Atisha, who was one of the great Indian masters instrumental in the development of Buddhism in Tibet, when he met people, he would ask them this question: how is your mind? What's the state of your mind? So usually when we meet people, we ask, how are you? Which usually means, how's your health? How's your body doing? But he would focus more on the mind. How's your mind doing? What's going on in your mind? So we don't have Lama Atisha around to ask us that question, but we can do it to ourselves as much as we can in our daily life. So those are two themes mentioned in this verse. So it kind of, like I say, it's a sort of summary of all the practices mentioned in the previous verses, trying to accomplish others' good and trying to watch our own mind and keep it away from disturbing emotions and positive as much as possible. So if we can do those two things as much as we can in our daily life, then we're doing really well. And then the last verse, verse 37, talks about dedication. So it says, to remove the suffering of limitless beings, understanding the purity of the three spheres, dedicate the virtue from making such effort to awakening. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So the advice here is whatever virtue or positive potential we create or accumulate by doing these practices and any other good deeds that we do, dedicate that to awakening. So again, this is to benefit others. The goal of enlightenment is to be able to help others be free of suffering, help them reach enlightenment as well. So it said that's the very best dedication we can do. Because if we just dedicate our merit to something that's more short-term, like happiness in this life, or good rebirths in next life, or liberation, these are more limited, narrow goals, and they're not as beneficial as they could be. So, but dedicating for enlightenment, this is the best way we can use our merit. It's like if you have some money and you want to invest it to get a little bit of profit, and maybe there's one investment that'll get you 5 cents a month, and another one will get you $100 a month. So, we would probably choose the one that gives you more interest or dividends, so you make more money. So it's kind of similar, with dedicating our merit. It is a bit like putting it in, they say it's like putting it in the bank, because if we don't dedicate our merit, there's a chance that it could get lost. Just like if we leave our money lying around the house, there's a chance that, could get stolen or lost, but putting it in a bank is keeping it safe. So they say dedicating our merit for enlightenment is like putting it in a bank so that it stays safe, and it also is a way of bringing the most benefit, because dedicating for enlightenment means all the other good things will come by the way. Good rebirths, happiness, health, resources, liberation. So all the good things up to enlightenment will also come about if we dedicate in that way. So we should always try to dedicate our virtues for enlightenment, for the benefit of all beings. And this verse also mentions understanding the purity of the three spheres. So this came up in one of the earlier verses, and it's bringing in emptiness, an understanding of emptiness. There's always three aspects to any action that we do. There's the doer of the action itself, and the object in relation to which the action is done. So a bodhisattva will bring in the understanding of emptiness with respect to all of these three things, both the doer, the action, and the object in relation to which the action is done, are all empty of inherent existence. And a simple way of understanding that, or keeping that in mind, is just to understand dependence, interdependence, how nothing exists by itself independently of anything else. And even in this, like a doer of an action doesn't exist without an action. There's no action, there's no doer. And vice versa. If there's no doer, there's no action. So those two things depend on each other. They can't exist without the other. And there also needs to be an object in relation to which, for example, the action of eating, which we're going to be doing soon. It's coming soon. Be patient. There's three things. There's the eater, and then there's the action of eating, and then there's what is eaten, the eaten, the food that we eat. So those three things depend on each other. Without one, the other two don't exist. So anyway, there's a lot to be said about that, but just understanding interdependence, how things depend on each other, they are mutually dependent, is a fairly easy way of getting an understanding of emptiness. So I was thinking, just for a few minutes, since this is the last talk we'll be doing on this text, that we could do this dedication that he mentions here, dedicate all the merit that we have accrued from myself giving these talks, you listening and thinking about them and trying to practice them as much as you can over the last couple of months. So all of this merit, all of this virtue, plus all the other merit that we have ever created, we can gather all of that mentally and dedicate it to awakening, to becoming fully enlightened Buddhas, so that we can help all beings be free of suffering and help all beings reach enlightenment as well. And see if you can do this with the understanding that the I, the one who did these actions, created this merit, and then the actions that we did to create the merit, and then the objects in relation to which we did the actions. For example, sentient beings on whose behalf we do everything we do. All of these things exist interdependently rather than independently. And therefore they don't exist inherently, objectively, from their own side. So this has been just a really brief look at this wonderful text. And in case any of you aren't aware of it, there is a book of Venerable Children's, probably based on talks that she gave, on this text, 37 Practices. So it's called Don't Believe Everything You Think. So it contains a lot more information. Also some very nice stories from students illustrating each of the verses. So if you are interested in knowing more about this book, about this text, 37 Practices, then that would be a source of information. So thank you very much.